third and fourth, but I will be very short because we have already wasted 12 minutes in the third and fourth methods. So by now we discussed the first method, that is critical expressive method. To the second method, we call that creative performance method. Let me start with a set of questions. I'm not going to answer, or we are not looking for answers, but this is something that we need to address in mind when we are trying to teach or address or study literature in the departments of English. The question is, are creativity and criticism the polar opposites? And the corollary questions are, do the departments of English literatures concentrate on criticism at the cost of creativity? Do the present trends in literary study discourage creativity and creative thinking? And are creative thinking and critical thinking entirely different? So answers will vary, but we must acknowledge that literature departments rarely take creativity seriously, though in this age of creativity and innovation in business, in media, in policymaking, this is an area that English lit studies can fruitfully invest in. And we may also want to be sure what creativity means. So creativity, briefly, we can say it means a process of bringing something new into being. But again, the concept of creativity varies across cultures. So when we talk about creative performative method, we are talking of creativity. So it involves creative thinking, that is making new connections between things. And in the words of Mark Turner, the literary mind is the mind that makes connection between bits and pieces to form something new or unexpected. We may recall Coleridge's conception of imagination as esemplastic power. And creative writing is the innovative and engaging use of language, so that it can makes innovative use of language to engage and attract the audience. Now, when we talk about performative designates an expression. For example, rhythm in a poem, body language in a play, an expression that constitutes the performance of an act or a transaction. Because it is performed, it has the potential to transform or subvert or innovate, which is attainable even within a restricted matrix. By effective, I mean the quality of engaging the audience and the way literature has impact upon the audience. So if this is the very basic of the creative and performative, so we can say that creative performative method mobilizes learners to perform a creative writer, which thus enables them to explore why a writer presented an event or image this way, not the other way. So a reader, that is learner, engages a close reading in order to understand what happens in that particular paragraph or stanza. Creative performing method also mobilizes learners to perform or to simulate the performance elements of a text. It enables them to empathize with or reenact the moments of sublimation. And this method motivates learners to explore the ways a writer accentuates or enhances the effect, which thus fosters the learner's creative skills in generating effective response. And the procedures may involve close reading of the verbal and nonverbal elements, and it also involves performance of verbal or nonverbal expressions for an engaged appreciation of the effect. So I will go for a very quick sampling of creative performative method. And as I tell that, it involves being in with the narrative. So if we take into account things fall apart again, then what I suggest is that when we ask, why does Okonkwo commit suicide? It is a valid question. But I suggest that let us also ask or mobilize the learners to seek, why did Achebe, the writer, make his hero commit suicide? Knowing that this event may affect the stature of Okonkwo's heroism, it may render him weak. So the question is, why did Achebe take this risk? Answering this question mobilizes learners to think the way a writer may have thought. My contention is this, that exposure to creative writing betters or adds nuances to our understanding and study of literature. Another point can be, for example, we are familiar with the very shocking description of the killing of Ikemefuna, who is not Okonkwo's son, but who calls Okonkwo's father. So we may ask the students to analyze the elements of brutality and pathos that inform the killing of Ikemefuna. But we may also mobilize them to follow how the event is represented and why that way. This requires a kind of interaction, but again, I'm not going for interaction because we are already running short of time. That is, what I will show in 2 minutes is that let the learners perform the writer. They will investigate, they will close read that particular paragraphs to investigate why Achebe shuttled between two perspectives in narrating the incident. So if we see this, the paragraph, where we will see that this paragraph is written, of course, it's from an omniscient narrator, but the omniscient narrative perspective now engages Ikemefuna, the person who is going to be killed very soon. So because this paragraph is told through Ikemefuna's perspective, it takes the audience into Ikemefuna, into his childishness, his nostalgia, and this engages the reader with Ikemefuna. This was necessary to accentuate the effect, the impact of tragedy, pathos that the reader is likely to feel after 3 paragraphs. The next paragraph also takes Ikemefuna's perspective. And next paragraph too. When Ikemefuna is afraid that something is going to happen, then the next paragraph does not take Ikemefuna. Rather, it takes Okonkwo's perspective. That is the paragraph that shows, that depicts the killing of Ikemefuna. That paragraph or engages Okonkwo's perspective. Let's see what happens. As the man who cleared his throat drew up and raised his mashet, Okonkwo looked away. Previously, in the previous 3 paragraphs, we were with Ikemefuna. Now the narrative takes Okonkwo, and Okonkwo looks away. He is little further. He does not want to see the killing. So as a reader, we do not see the killing, the brutality. We only listen to, as Okonkwo is listening to, and Okonkwo is not seeing. Next line, he heard the blow, and we, the reader, also hears the blow. Then also there is hearing image. The pot fell and broke in the sand. He heard Ikemefuna cry, "My father, they have killed me," as he ran towards him. And it is when Ikemefuna is running towards him, then Okonkwo looks, and therefore the visual image comes that he ran towards him. Dazed with fear, Okonkwo drew his mashet and cut him down. He was afraid of being thought weak. So 2 points, let us quickly recap that what this strategy has. That is, Achebe shuttles in these 4 paragraphs between Ikemefuna's and Okonkwo's perspectives. This shuttling, on the one hand, presents the brutality of the killing of a child less brutally, because that event is presented through Okonkwo. But the impact of tragedy, impact of pathos is accentuated because before it happens, the audience is made connected, engaged with Ikemefuna's thoughts. The another point is that the killing of Ikemefuna, it is important for the writer to tell us why Okonkwo kills, and that short one-liner that he was afraid of being thought weak tells us a lot about why Okonkwo kills Ikemefuna. So what it means is that, and it also takes us, for example, if we go to the previous paragraph, that is when we are with Ikemefuna. Ikemefuna, if you see at the last line, is thinking about Ize Elina Elina. That is, he is recalling a song, a childhood song, and he is singing it. Now, this is presented in this way. No such clarification is there. we may mobilize the students to explore why this song is presented here. On the one hand, this is a praise song, a kind of advice poem, and this tells us, gives us some idea about African literature or orature. What is more important is this, that this is an advice poem. Only the title is given, Eze Elina Elina. The song reads this way: King, do not eat, do not eat. King, if you eat it, you will weep for the abomination, where white and installs king, where dust dances to the drums, Salah. Salah is a kind, it's nothing to do with Bangladeshi Shala, it is about the Salah is a kind of refrain. So Achebe just refers to this song, does not go for clarification. If we know the meaning, it takes us to something much deeper that we will miss if we do not explore what this song means. What we understand is that this song is a kind of advice poem. It is cautioning our king that do not do this act. If you do this, you will have a dishonorable death, and you will not meet the ancestors. You will leave, your soul will live in this world. I think we understand that this song is actually a kind of foreshadowing. That is, Okonkwo is going to do something that he not or should not do. And it is this that somehow we need to address in order to understand the text. Let me know if I'm just going beyond any decent sense of time. Okay, I will take 15 more minutes. I think that 15 more minutes I will be able to wrap up this discussion.
Yes. Okay, you can take your time, no problem. It's always great to listen from you.
Yes, fine. Okay. So what I suggest is that if we take the learners into the way Achebe wrote these paragraphs, this will take them the persona, the role of the writer. So they will explore why this writer wrote this way, not the other way, and which impact, therefore, does it have or generate. So what I suggest is that in this activity, the learners perform the writer. And not only, and because they are performing the writer, they will also go for exploring the element of Eze Elina Elina. So on the one hand, through this study, through this way of study and exploration, the learners may learn how certain feelings can be accentuated. That is, the feeling of tragedy and pathos, how the writer accentuates these feelings. And also how certain feelings can be subdued or sidetracked. For example, the enormity of the brutality of killing a child, how Achebe also very deliberately handles this brutality. So how certain affect is accentuated and certain affect is subdued, they may learn if they involve with the process of writing, kind of simulating that writing. But since they will also need to explore why Achebe uses Eze Elina Elina, this exploration takes them into the study of this praise song, and that will bring them to Achebe's flat style. And this apparently simple quotation is actually a kind of foreshadowing. And very much like the kings who are cautioned not to do this abominable act, Okonkwo, through narrative, is cautioned that he should not do this act. And if he does, he may have to face a dishonorable death, and that he will face at the end of the novel. If this study is more on creativity, the second sample will focus on performativity. And again, I'm taking into account post-colonial literature, particularly on the Caribbean literature or Barbadian literature, the literature from Barbados. And I'm taking into account Edward Kamau Bradford's The Arrivants, a New World trilogy. Yes, our students at Jahangirnagar University are familiar with it, but not everyone. So let me offer a very, very brief summary of this book. So this is, as this said, it's a trilogy, and it's called the New World Trilogy. And it unfolds in 3 sections of 3 books. The first book is called Rites of Passage. So it is about a Caribbean persona who is looking for his identity. So in the first book, The Rites of Passage, a Black persona It's something like the Eleusinian persona in the wasteland. That is, this black persona might be the first slave or might be a contemporary gangster black boy. So a black persona who is in the Americas, in the Latin America, in the South America, and also in the North America, who is searching for the root and searching for the place of one's own. So the setting is the Americas. In the second book, which is called Masks, there is a reverse diaspora. That is, this black persona in search of cultural and identitarian roots, he goes back to Africa. Now, this takes us to the third book, that is Islands. In this book, the persona comes back to the Caribbean with frustration because he does not find him Africa. But with this frustration, he has a renewed energy. That is, since he does not find himself in the Americas and in the Africa, so what he needs to do now is to innovate his identity in his own way. So he is invested with an energy and vision to make something torn and something new. Now, I will focus on 2 poems. One is in the Masks section. In the Masks book, there is a poem called Atumpan. Atumpan is called talking drum. That is a drum that can communicate, that has its own vocabulary, and that can make sense. That can even offer proclamation. Now, in his poem, in his English poem Atumpan, Brathwaite uses drum language. There is a quotation. It is the beginning of this poem, and remember that it is a poem in English, but it starts with a drum language. And what is important is that in this, when we read this poem, we need to perform it. And Brathwaite offers some performance, and that is available on the internet. So we cannot simply read it, we need to perform it. For example, as per Brathwaite, we need to read it this way. Kon 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 kon, kun 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 kun, funtumi akore, toinboa akore, toinboa kodia, kodia toinduru, odomankomo chiramase, odomankomo chiramase, oko babia, oko babia. This way, this will happen, and then comes the interpretation or English translation of the same thing. So the suggestion is this, that while reading this poem, we need to address and accentuate the performance elements of the poem. This, I said, that engages the reader or learner with the resistive discursive strategy Brathwaite uses. The another element is stammering in the poem Negus. This poem appears in the third book called Islands. Negus means a lot of things that we are not addressing. We are addressing the way the poem is written. The poem starts this way. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not enough. It is not enough to be free of the red, white, and blue, of the drag and the dragon. Now, what we can say is that critics argued that the use of stammering, that is, it's not simply repetition, it is a kind of stammering. Now, critics argue that this stammering is a kind of stammation or a kind of stammament. So what stammation suggests? Stammation is a combination of stammer plus narration, that is narrating through summary. Narrating through stammering. And stammament is a combination of stammer plus monument, that is destabilizing, that is through stammering, destabilizing imperial memorials or monuments. So when it is said it is not, this involves both stammation and stammament. So the utterance can be read as stammation, because think, does this stammering suggest the speakers, that is a Caribbean speakers, inability or unwillingness of pronouncing English words, that is words of a foreign language? Does this incompetence in English lead to broken communication? Is this also is this deliberate disruption of English? a kind of resistance against linguistic imperialism. We may also consider the stammering as stammament. In Nathaniel Mackey's words, a monument is a material inscription whereby imperial authority sanctifies and memorializes itself, which has an alienating and inferiorizing impact upon the colonial subject. So stammament exposes how such material inscriptions obstruct the indigenous culture, impeding the emergence of post-colonial speech. Thus, stammament exemplifies the innovation with which to destabilize the monument, that is, taking linguistic liberties to decolonize the word. Now, if we move into the last part of the poem, it appears this way. Atiban Ligba, Ovi by Pomoa, Ovi by Pomoa. Now, in this section, that is at the end of the poem, Radvait invokes voodoo, precisely the voodoo Orisha or god Papa Ligba or Atibon Ligba, which is the Haiti god of door. Hence the term Ovi by Pomoa. That is, it's a Caribbean French patois meaning open the door for me, for making space ahead, for transformation. Now, if we compare, it is not an at-atidan. If we compare these stammations, we may find something more exciting. How do we make sense of the stammering in the last case? If the speaker's stammering or competence in the first case is an example of resistance, it is not resistance against the imposition of English. His stammering or incompetence in the second case is an example of the ways he is initiating himself into his own language and culture, into voodoo culture that he is unknown about, and therefore he is stammering. So what I suggest is that in this kind of activity, the learners perform drum language and stammering. And through this, they enter or they simulate the linguistic experience of incompetence or of re-engagement that colonized subjects encounter. And they also experience the ways one may sublimate suffering, transform suffering into something productive. And the ways anartha, I'm using a Sanskrit word, that is how anartha or meaninglessness can make artha, can make meaning. Well,